Wait a minute. I'm going to read the whole verse because I was getting some realizations from it. This is, and then you can read the next purport of this. I want to read the purport because it's pretty heavy. Evam janmani karmani hiyakutur ajanasyacha varnasyanti smakavayo veda guyani kritprate. I'm just going to read the translation. Thus, learned men describe the births and activities of the unborn and inactive, which is undiscoverable even in the Vedic literatures. He is the Lord in the heart. Purport. Both the Lord and the living entities are essentially all spiritual. Both of them are eternal, and neither of them has birth and death. The difference is that the so-called births and disappearances of the Lord are unlike those of the living beings. Living beings who take birth and then again accept death are bound by the laws of material nature. But the so-called appearance and disappearance of the Lord are not actions of material nature, but are demonstrations of the internal potency of the Lord. They're described by the great sages for the purpose of self-realization. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that by the Lord that his so-called birth in the material world and his activities are all transcendental. And simply by meditation on such activities, one can attain realization of Brahman and thus become liberated from material bondage. In the Shrutis, it is said that the birthless person appears to take birth. The birthless person is Kṛṣṇa. The Supreme has nothing to do, but because he is omnipotent, everything is performed by him naturally, as if done automatically. As a matter of fact, the appearance and disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his different activities are all confidential, even to the Vedic literatures. Yet, they are displayed by the Lord to bestow mercy upon the conditioned souls. We should always take advantage of the narrations of the activities of the Lord, which are meditations on Brahman in the most convenient and palatable form. In other words, you meditate on the form of Supreme, his personality. Kṛṣṇa says in Bhagavad Gita, if you understand the nature of my appearance and disappearance, you will not take birth again in this material world. You'll be liberated from this material bondage that we have, because you'll understand me as I am. If you understand his birth and activities, sometimes it's hard, like if you don't have transcendental realization, if you don't have this understanding of who Kṛṣṇa is, we think, like my father thinks, when we're dead, it's over. We're just a combination of chemicals and we're just going to go into dust to dust. And he said he wants his ashes thrown in the forest, where he used to hike in Vermont. Because after he's dead, nothing's going to be there. His consciousness isn't going to be there. The soul's not be there. And he used to tell me this joke. He used to say, it was funny the first time, but then after that, after about the 500th time, he's like 93 years old now. So it became not funny. He said, if I find out that there's a life after death, I'll say, I'll be damned. So it's not funny after the 15th time he said it, the 15th joke, because it's really not a laughing matter. And he thinks that he's going to be happy. Even at 93, he can't even move. He's sitting on his couch, going from the commode to the couch in my brother's house. And he's thinking, he said in the letter, he said, that sounds really bad, but it's not really that bad. Yeah, it is. It's horrible.
Oh, no.
So, people still think they're going to enjoy. So they put a smiling face on it. And they don't understand. They don't think, even at that age, they still think they're going to enjoy, and they still think that they're going to, be happy in this material world. But they don't take seriously, even at that age. What to speak of young people who don't care a damn about, the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. They don't even think about it. They put it off till later. So it's really, really important. And you might think, well, what about, is there really a life after death? This really does, these verses, if you actually look into the words, these are conclusive words from the Vedas, and you really can't even, you can understand that the soul is eternal just by hearing these words, the nature of the Supreme is that we're eternal spirit souls, and neither of them have birth and death. It says right that in the first sentence. So, you got to take it for granted these things are real and not doubt them in any way, because otherwise it's really depressing. If you think that this life is all in all and that we're going to die and it's just, we're just a bunch of beeping atoms and we don't live after death and everything's finished after that, that's horrible. I mean, that life is more than that. So I'm going to read just the Sanskrit and then the translation. You can read the purport.
All right.
Savaidam Vishwam Mogalila Sujatiyavati na Sujatismin Bhuteshu Chatarhita Atmatantra Sad Vargikam Jigrati Sadgunesha. Translation: Oh, the Lord, whose activities are always spotless, is the master of the six senses and is fully omnipotent with six opulences. He creates the manifested universes, maintains them, and annihilates them without being in the least affected. He is within every living being and is always independent.
The purport is the prime difference between the Lord and the living entity is that the Lord is the creator and the living entities are the created. Here he is called the
Amogalila,
which indicates that there is nothing lamentable in his creation. Those who create disturbances in his creations are themselves disturbed. He is transcendental to all material afflictions because he is full with all the six opulences, namely wealth, power, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, and thus he is the master of the senses. He creates these manifested universes in order to reclaim the living beings who are within them, suffering the threefold miseries, maintains them, and in due course annihilates them without being the least affected by such actions. He is connected with the material creations very superficially, as one smells odor, without being connected with the odorous article. Non-godly elements, therefore, can never approach him despite all endeavors.
Yeah, it's like he's like completely transcendental, and the people, the heavy sentence in that one is, those who create disturbances in his creation are themselves disturbed. It's kind of like jujitsu, you have a move where somebody comes at you and you use that energy, that kinetic energy that they're to go back on them. Kṛṣṇa is beyond material modes. And so people think that they're creating a disturbance, but they themselves are disturbed by that as a result of their karma. It comes around, what goes around comes around, and if you try to hurt somebody, you're going to be hurt. And Kṛṣṇa is not affected at all, though, because he's transcendental to everything. Just like the Muslims, when they invaded all the temples in India, they smashed the deities. And that not only did they smash the deities, they thought they were going to teach these Hindus a lesson. They broke them up and put them in the steps of their temples so that they could walk on them for like centuries. So they, walk on the deities of Kṛṣṇa and the Hindus, because they hated them so much. And they thought that was a big insult, but Kṛṣṇa doesn't care. Even a devotee doesn't care. Even if they kill the body, if the atomic bomb comes, the devotee has no fear. There was this made-for-TV movie in 1984. It was called The Day After, that a bomb hits Kansas City, and the whole city is wiped out. They show it going over the Chiefs Stadium. Back in '84, they had that stadium that's there now where the Kansas City Chiefs play. And they showed these missiles going across the sky, and then it hit big mushroom cloud. And then everybody's walking around afterwards. They're all so depressed because their entire civilization was wiped out. But my spiritual master said after the end, that people needed counseling after that. They were so affected because everything was gone. Their family was gone. Their houses were gone. Everything. People that survived anyway, and a lot of people were sick from radiation, and they were just so depressed. And Bhaktipada said, a devotee has no, the karmis, in other words, the people living in that material world, and especially represented in that movie, the karmis have no hope, but devotees have no fear. And they were asked Prabhupada once, what do we do, Prabhupada, if the nuclear bombs come? You know, they're hyping that now just to get clicks on my MSN feed, you know, the news, you know, what will happen if a bomb hits New Jersey, you know, and they show the map, you know, and everything. But devotees don't care about that. And Prabhupada would say one thing for most cases, it's, you know, say, what do devotees do? In fact, they had an article in the Science magazine, what places to avoid if a nuclear holocaust. What are you going to do? Hide behind a bush? How about the earth? How about that? You try to avoid the earth if a bomb hits, you know, because there's no place that's safe. And so, but Prabhupada would always say, you know, what do we do? He'd say in a deep voice, he'd say, Chant Hare Kṛṣṇa. That was Prabhupada's answer to pretty much everything. Even if a devotee couldn't control his mind. Prabhupada, I can't control my mind. Chant Hare Kṛṣṇa. But my mind, Prabhupada, my mind, just chant Hare Kṛṣṇa. He never paid any psychiatrist any money for any kind of counseling because they could handle it from the transcendental platform, you know. Okay, let's go on to the next one here. 37. Nachasya kishmin nipunena dator avaiti jantu kamanishati namani rupani manovachobi santanvato nata charyam ivagna. Translation: the foolish with a poor fund of knowledge cannot know the transcendental nature of the forms, names, and activities of the Lord, who is playing like an actor in a drama. Nor can they express such things, neither in their speculation nor in their words. They have no clue who Kṛṣṇa is. Go ahead.
The poor part. No one can properly describe the transcendental nature of the absolute truth. Therefore, it is said that he is beyond the expression of the mind and speech. And yet, there are some men with a poor fund of knowledge who desire to understand the absolute truth by imperfect mental speculation and faulty description of his activities. To the layman, his activities, appearance and disappearance, his names, his forms, his paraphernalia, his personalities, and all things in relation with him are mysterious. There are two classes of materialists, namely the fruitive worker and the empiric philosopher. The fruitive workers have practically no information of the absolute truth, and the mental speculators, often after being frustrated in fruitive activities, turn their faces towards the absolute truth and try to know him by mental speculation. For all these men, the absolute truth is a mystery, as the jugglery of the magician is a mystery to children. Being deceived by the jugglery of the Supreme Lord, the non-devotees who may be very dexterous and fruitive work, mental speculation, are always in ignorance. With such a limited knowledge, they are unable to penetrate into the mysterious regions of transcendence. The mental speculators are a little more progressive than the gross materialists or the fruitive workers, because they are also within the grip of illusion. They take it for granted that anything which has form, a name, and activities is but a product of material energy. For them, the Supreme Spirit is formless, nameless, and inactive. And because such mental speculators equalize a transcendental name and form of the lured with mundane names and forms, they are fact in ignorance. With such a poor fund of knowledge, there is no access to the real name of the Supreme Being. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is always in a transcendental position, even when he is within the material world. But ignorant men consider the Lord one of the great personalities of the world, and thus they are misled by the illusory energy.
Yeah, you know what I compare it to? Because they can never know the supreme truth. No matter how much they speculate, no matter how they, there's two methods of knowledge. There's by hearing, that's a deductive process. You hear from authorities like Prabhupada in the books. And it comes down from the spiritual world through the disciplic succession into your heart and mind. And then there's people that try to speculate. Oh, they look at the material world and they analyze it and they try to use their senses, which are imperfect, but they use like advanced technology like telescopes and microscopes and try to analyze it. And they figure out laws of nature by mathematics and try to calculate the origin of everything. And they want to create like a grand unified theory. Like just like Einstein's theory of relativity was very simple, equals mc². Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. But they want to have a grand unified theory based on gravity and Einstein's theory of relativity and quantum physics all together, and put the guy that had the atomic collider laboratory in Texas. His name is Leon Lederman. He wanted to, his brother had a t-shirt business. And so he wanted to put a simple t-shirt that would explain everything in the universe with a simple thing you'd put on a t-shirt. You think that would be good for his brother, but it's not simply like that. What if the universe is like beyond this material nature? They're trying to look for the beginning of everything by these telescopes, these looking in and digging into asteroids and taking a little bit of sample, and they're going to figure out the beginning of life in another planet. I don't think so. They're looking in the wrong place. They're like a man that's looking for his keys, which he lost in the driveway. He's looking for them in the street because the light is there, he can see. So they're looking at their senses, but they a priori, in other words, before they even think about anything else, they reject all other types of knowledge and just take empiric knowledge, logic, and reason, and try to figure out the supreme in that way. And they'll never figure it out. And Prabhupada said, well, his disciples were walking with him on the shores of the Pacific Ocean in like the 70s. He did that Life Comes from Life book, and the devotee was taking the devil's advocate and saying, well, the scientists they say that they're always improving on they're always improving their calculations. That's why they come up with a new theory every once in a while to improve on their last one. And Prabhupada said, no, that means they're always wrong.
I see where that's going. I do see where that's going. They're always wrong.
They'll never know because they're not looking in the right place. They refuse to look at any kind of transcendental source beyond this material nature. Therefore, they're called materialistic reductionist scientists. They try to reduce this material world, life itself, and the creation down to interactions between chemicals and, chance combinations of chemicals produced amino acids, and amino acids turned into whatever. But it doesn't work that way. Nothing happens by chance. It says there's a Greek saying, I don't know what the Greek is, but it means the dice of God are always loaded. He performs all his activities in a sequence All he does is give it a push. Just by his will, the entire universe is created. And it all happens in a sequence. He's so perfect. And they have no idea. They can't, they say, well, they will create life in the future. And they say life came from chemicals in the past. And they say, well, if you're such great chemists, why don't you take the chemicals? You already have the chemicals. Why don't you create life right now? So no, we'll do it in the future. And Prabhupada said, that's like a post-dated check. If you want to create life, if you want to give me some money, if you want to give me $5 million, you should at least give me $5 in cash to show me you have some collateral. But they don't have anything. They have no idea of how it happened. So they can't even create a little mosquito or a drop of milk in their laboratories. But they think, oh, yes, I'm going to do it in the future. It's a post-dated check. It's a bluff. They'll never be able to do it because they don't, whatever they can create doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have any. Life comes from life. It doesn't come from chemicals. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm kind of glad that you got out of that whole thing. You quit your abiogenesis research, wanted to figure out. Didn't they ask you had a question that you had to answer, like how life or how the universe came?
I think we had a little glimpse go on.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. I couldn't see what was happening here.
All right, anyway, we got it good. All right.
We got it now. So let's continue on here. We got about 9 minutes left.
All right.
Saveda datu paravim parasya duranta virasya gratanga pate yomaya santatayanu vritaya vajeta tat pada saroja gandam. Translation. Only those who render unreserved, uninterrupted, favorable service unto the lotus feet of Lord Kṛṣṇa, who carries the wheel of the chariot in his hand, can know the creator of the universe in his full glory, power, and transcendence. Go ahead.
The purport is only the pure devotees can know the transcendental name, form, and activities of the Lord Kṛṣṇa due to their beginning completely freed from the reactions of fruitive work and mental speculation. The pure devotees have nothing to derive as personal profit from their unalloyed service to the Lord. They render incense service to the Lord spontaneously without any reservation. Everyone with the creation of the Lord is rendering service to the Lord indirectly or directly. No one is an exception to this law of the Lord. Those who are rendering service indirectly, being forced by the illusory agent of the Lord, are rendering service unto him unfavorably. But those who are rendering service unto him directly under the directions of his beloved agent are rendering service unto him favorably. Such favorable servitudes are devotees of the Lord, and by the grace of the Lord, they can enter into a mysterious region of transcendence by the mercy of the Lord. But the mental speculators remain in darkness all the time. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself guides the pure devotees toward the path of realization due to their constant engagement in the loving service of the Lord and spontaneous affection. That is the secret of entering into the kingdom of God. Fruitive activities and speculation are no qualifications for entering.
Yeah, it says in the later in the Bhagavatam, it says the definition, or actually in the Nectar Devotion, it says the definition of pure devotional service is, and service is the key, because unless you're constantly spontaneously engaged in the service of Kṛṣṇa, you want to figure out what I can do for him. That's what my spiritual master always used to say. How can I serve you now, my Lord? How can I render service now? Every moment we have to be asking that question, because we're so jaded with our own material desires. We don't have any idea of how to act in transcendence. We don't know how to connect with Kṛṣṇa and serve him, because that's our constitutional position. Our reason to be is to serve. He created us for his own pleasure, so we can serve him. He wants us to come back to his pleasure dance in the spiritual world and be engaged in blissful pastimes with him forever. But we're too busy, with our own senses, and we don't know how to serve him. And unless we're constantly engaged in service spontaneously, without these two things, fruitive activities and mental speculation, those have to be completely out of the question. You can't, do fruitive activities means you want a result from something. You work to get paid, or I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine. But that's not a qualification. It's not like a business arrangement between God and the living entity. You can't do that. Kṛṣṇa reserves a right not to be seen by people who want their own thing and who are simply using their own mind to try to figure out God, because you can never figure him out. Kṛṣṇa has to reveal himself when he is pleased with you, and when you're constantly engaged, he'll give you the intelligence by which you can come to him. Otherwise, you're not going to get there. It's like a velvet rope in the club. If there's a bouncer at the door, they're not going to lift the rope unless you know somebody, and in that person that you'd have to know is a spiritual master, and by his beloved agent. It says here, under the direction of his beloved agent. See, it's like two rails on a train, the spiritual master and Kṛṣṇa. Those are two tracks back to Godhead. And if you have full faith in those two personalities and render service unto both of them simultaneously, all the purports of the Vedas are simultaneously revealed from within the heart, spontaneously. You don't need to study and cram your brain full of garbage. It's all there. It's already there in our heart, but it just has to be revealed. And Kṛṣṇa will reveal himself if we serve submissively the spiritual master. The pleasure of the spiritual master is everything in Kṛṣṇa consciousness. So, text 39. Atheha danya bhagavanta itam yad vasudeve kilokanate kurvanti sarvatmakam atma bhavan nayatribhuya parivarta gra. Translation: only by making such inquiries in this world can one be successful and perfectly cognizant. For such inquiries invoke transcendental ecstatic love unto the personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of all the universes, and guarantee cent% immunity from the dreadful repetition of birth and death. These are such awesome. Go ahead.
The purport is the inquiries of the sages headed by Sunaka were here with praised by Sutta Goswami on the merit of their transcendental nature. As already concluded, only the devotees of the Lord can know him to a considerable extent, and no one else can know him at all. So the devotees are perfectly cognizant of all spiritual knowledge. The personality of Godhead is the last word in absolute truth. And personal Brahman and localized Paramatma is a supersoul, as are concluded in the knowledge of the personality of Godhead. So one who knows the personality of Godhead can automatically know all about him, his multipotencies and his expansions. So the devotees are congratulated as being all successful. A cent%
devotee. That's
yeah, 7%. Yeah, it took me a minute. What it was saying, 7% devotee of the Lord is immune to the dreadful material miseries of repeated birth and death.
Yeah, that's a term that Prabhupada uses a lot. 10% means like, every single ounce of their being is 100% engaged in devotional service. 10%. So we got like a little bit more than a minute left. You got any questions?
Yeah, since we were talking about the telescopes and we were talking about like how we can't get there to the Goloka Vrindavan and any of the heavenly planets with a telescope, but we can only do with the soul or the Saturn. Isn't Saturn a demigod? Like, isn't his name Shawnee Dave? Isn't that a
Yeah,
demigod?
yeah.
Saturn.
That's Shani.
Is,
Yeah,
yeah,
every
isn't
single
he a
planet has a
demigod?
demigod.
Just like the moon and
The moon is
Venus.
Chandra. The sun is Surya. Vivishwan is the demigod, and the earth is Bhumi. Their
All
personality.
right. Oh, okay. So Vishnu is the name of the sun, but Surya is
No,
also the name of
Vivishwan
the
is the
sun.
name of the personality that's in charge of the sun. He lives there.
Oh, okay.
He has
Oh,
a
he
body
lives
that's
there.
accustomed to living in that atmosphere. We got
Uh,
9 minutes left. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you next week. Two
All right.
guys.
Thank you.